I want to let you in on a personal struggle of mine. Sometimes I feel that I don't know these days where to turn. COVID-19 has created a new paradigm for our community and indeed for the entire world. There are so many new needs, concerns, and objectives. Sometimes I feel that it's just too much. I wonder if any of you are feeling that same way, or if you have felt that you don't know where to turn, what to do next, what to do first. What are we supposed to do with these feelings? What should our priorities be? How do we figure that out? How do we sift through everything and focus on one thing, on what is most important? Rabbi Soloveitchik addressed this, at least on a communal level, in an essay entitled Jewish Self-Sacrifice. He states something that is at once remarkable and rather logical. He calls it a fundamental of faith. He says that if we really want to know what is important, we should listen to what our enemies are saying. We don't always have to turn to Maimonides or Rabbi Yehuda Halevi. If our enemies are focusing on something, then that is a signal that that is really important. This explains a strange Gemara that declares that at certain times a Jew must be willing to give up their life if pressured to change something as seemingly unimportant as the color of their shoelaces. The point is that if the enemies of the Jewish people are focused even on the simplest aspect of Jewish identification, that is a certain indication that it is a crucial principle. Here's a telling example. Why does the Talmud Bavli and Yerushalmi contain rules of Kodashim, the rules dealing with sacrifices brought in the Beit HaMikdash? The answer is that despite the fact that those rules were not relevant at the time that these tractates were written, since the idea of the importance of the Beit HaMikdash was disparaged by the nations of the world, the rabbis specifically spent time studying those topics. Our ongoing hope for the rebuilding of the Beit HaMikdash influenced our sages to never stop studying the laws relating to the temple. The nations of the world wish to address our deep connection to the Beit HaMikdash. Therefore, our rabbis work extra hard to continue studying those subjects in the hope that they will one day be relevant again. We learn something remarkable from this approach. Sometimes we do not know what we should be fighting for. There are so many important things in our lives, so many worthwhile endeavors we can and should devote our time to. When it comes to what our focus should be at any given time, it should be on those things that are under siege. When the nations of the world were trying to discredit the importance of the Beit HaMikdash, of the temple, our sages doubled down on studying those rules as a message to all of us of how important they are. It seems to me that the front that we should open up then is clear. Our sense of community is under siege, and I want to be careful. We are not under siege, thank God, from outside forces. We are not under siege, thank God, from an external enemy, but because of our circumstances. Our communities, our shul, our schools are struggling. If so, then that is where our focus should be. There's a beautiful story in the Gemara that illustrates this idea. The story of Nicanor. Maybe some of you have heard of him. Nicanor na'asu nisim l'dilotav v'hayu mazkrinoto l'shevach. With regard to Nicanor, the Gemara says, miracles were performed to his doors. These were doors in the gates of the temple named for him, and people were to mention him for good. And the Gemara goes on to explain the story of the gates of Nicanor. Ma nisim na'asu l'dilotav? What were the miracles that were done for his doors? Amru kishahalach Nicanor lahavi dilatot mi'Alexandria shel Mitzrayim. When Nicanor went to bring copper doors for the eastern gate of the temple from Alexandria in Egypt, b'chazirato amad alav nachshol shavim letav'o. On his return voyage in a ship, a storm arose in the sea and threatened to drown him. V'natlu et achat mehen. And they threw one of the doors overboard, fearing that its weight would sink the ship. V'adayin lo nach hayam miza'afo. But the sea did still not rest from its rage. Bikshu lahatil et chevrata. They sought then to throw the other door over. Amadhu vikarcha. At that point, Nicanor stood up and he embraced the door and said, Hatiluni ima. If you throw this door overboard, throw me over with it. And at that moment, miyad nachayam miza'afo. Immediately, the sea rested from its rage. And as the boat continued from Alexandria in Egypt to the port of Akko, when the boat docked in Akko, the miracle was that the door that they had thrown overboard was poking out from under the side of the ship. At the end, a miracle is performed and both doors survive. And the end of this story is so, so beautiful. Lefichach kol hasha'arim shayu b'mikdash nishtanu liyot shel zahav. Eventually, all of the doors in the temple were changed to be doors of gold. Chutz mishare Nikanor, mifnei shenasu bo nisim. Except for the Nikanor doors, the doors that Nikanor donated because a miracle had been performed for them. At the end of the story, even what was thought to be lost was found and became a permanent feature in the Beit HaMikdash. In the merit of Nicanor fighting for what was under siege, not only what he fought for was saved, but even that which was thought to be lost forever in the sea was rediscovered. Collectively, our struggle is on the communal level. We have to double down on our community, on supporting UOS. And we have tried mightily throughout this period of time to provide programming and connection to as many people as possible, to all of our members, through phone calls, through letters, through deliveries, through programs, counseling, classes. We have tried. And our community needs, UOS needs the collective support of all of us. RMBA, Robert and Barrett Academy, likewise, needs the hug that Nicanor gave to his door to make sure that it would not be thrown into the sea. Our communal institutions, these twins of ours, like the twin doors of Nicanor, require our commitment. And like the rabbis who double down on learning the laws of the sacrifices, we must double down on our commitment to our institutions. Individually, well, we have, all of us, I'm sure, our own areas where we may have slipped, understandably, over the last 6 or 7 months. Regular davening, getting dressed for Shabbat, in Shabbat clothes, and having regular Shabbat meals, regular Torah learning, opportunities to do chesed. Maybe for some of us, some of these things have slipped out of our hands. The story of Nicanor's commitment reminds us of the sacrifice needed to preserve what is important. Finding what was lost is not easy, but it is possible if we are willing to try hard, like Nicanor was. Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz, known as the Shla HaKadosh, teaches that the reason why every section of the shofar blowing starts with a tikiyah and ends with a tikiyah is to remind us of the possibility of new beginnings. We start with a straight and pure and strong tikiyah, but then we have the broken shivarim and turah sounds in the middle, representing when things may go wrong. But we always return to the strong and solid tikiyah. This is the message of the shofar for us this year. Our tikiyah plans have been interrupted by the broken sounds of the shofar. Yet, as the shofar sounds teach us, we can always come back to the tikiyah. We can always regain what was temporarily lost. We may think we may have lost things. We may think that we have lost aspects of our community. We may think that elements of our personal observance have suffered. But if we fight for what is important, like Nicanor did, then not only will what we struggle for survive, but even what we think is already gone can miraculously be rediscovered and reappear. Shana Tova.